are live. Give me a second. Hello, everyone. Again, after first of all, happy Father's Day to every father in the world, right? Not only the biological father, but also of those who are actually taking the responsibility of being a father. So it's been a while since I've done the Facebook Live, but we are back. So hintay lang natin muna na makapag-join yung ibang interesado sa topic natin ngayon. So basically, ang topic natin ngayon is the how to increase your chance of getting H1B sponsorship. I am actually geared towards more on the side of the applicant. But I'll touch based on ano yung mga issues natin sa employers, but we'll go there, right? And we have also special guests mamaya. So we'll just give some few minutes for the people to join para naman to give them opportunities na mag-ask ng questions. So then again, this live is intended for you to ask questions, so we would be able to answer them as well. Okay? It's Sunday morning here in New York. Alam kong gabi na sa Philippines. And thank you for joining us today. So hi, Sir Ricky. Thank you for joining. So then again, just let us know if we sound okay. Okay. Now, so just maybe 2-3 minutes. We are just also just checking our social media platforms. So as much as possible, kung may mga tanong kayo, if you could basically just limit it to the topic at hand today. Kasi alam ko that people who have actually been waiting for Facebook Live, they actually tend to ask me questions outside of the topic. I actually, don't worry, I'm back now, so we would basically set another Facebook Live session to have an open um, Facebook Live na pwede nyo magtanong any topic. But for now, we would just like to answer questions related to H1B. Hello, Miss Winnie Bernardo from North Carolina. Again, thank you for joining now. Okay, I think we can start now. I'm actually sharing my screen. So again, topic natin today is increasing your chance of getting H1B sponsorship. So if I go to my next slide, we will be joined today, members of the panel. We have our resource speakers. I'll introduce you to them. Say hi, Crystal.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Or, hi, everybody.
Okay. Hello, Kim.
Hi everyone.
Okay. Hello, Crystal.
Hello, everyone. Have a good evening.
Okay. Okay. So later, they will be actually assigned to specific topics. But they will be joining me today for the Facebook Live. Okay, we're good. So I just want to remind now everybody that again, this is a Facebook Live. The intention is for me to answer general questions. So if I would ask your question specifically, don't take it as a personal advice to you. So this presentation does not create lawyer-client relationship. I'm just trying to answer your question generally by using your fact pattern. So, but if you would want to discuss your case in a more detailed conversation, then set up an appointment with us. Our number is actually our office numbers are actually posted or indicated in the screen, so you could basically reach out to us. Okay, hindi ko na isa-isahin yung mga nagjo-join sa atin ngayon, right? Kasi nga dumadami na yung nagjo-join. But again, thank you very much. So, while our topic today is about the H1 visa, but majority kasi ng mga kasamahan natin na mga teachers are actually on the J1 or basically intending to come to the United States on a J1 visa. So, I might as well discuss the difference between the J1 and the H1 visa. And again, I will constantly be looking into your questions here. If may makita ako na deserve to be responded to, then I will highlight that question and then we'll talk about that. So feel free to write your questions ahead of time. You can interrupt my presentation anytime so we can talk about your issue. So let's start about comparing the J1 and the H1. So I am not against J1, but what I'm actually just trying to do here is to educate people on the difference between the J and the H, so you will have more informed decisions. I mean, consideration when you actually make a decision whether mag J1 kayo or mag H1 visa kayo. So, a J1 visa is not a working visa. So, it's an exchange visitor visa. This is a product of a conversation or a treaty between the United States and the Philippines, right? So, this is the exchange visitor program. So, you're basically coming here to teach so that you'll be able to actually impart your knowledge, skills, or methodology to the U.S. students. And at the same time, after your program, you could actually bring back whatever your learnings and then ituturo mo na rin yun sa mga Filipino students natin. And that's basically the nature of the J1 visa. So the J1 visa is not really intended for you to come to the United States and permanently stay here. That's the reason why when you actually signed up for a J1 program, you were reminded that after your J1 program expires or ends, you have to go home. And of course, there are waivers that we will be discussing in a bit. But again, I just want to remind you that when you sign the J1 visa program, you know that you will be going home when the program ends. Okay? So ngayon, the H has no restriction like that. So pag kunwari, binigyan kayo ng job offer at ang binigay sa iyo is H visa, then it's okay to plan ahead that you may not go back to the home country kasi gusto niyo na magtuloy-tuloy yung journey niyo sa US, no? From the H, pwede ka na mag-green card, and then eventually you become a US citizen. So that's basically the major difference between the J1 and the H1 visa. In terms of duration and timing, so again, the J1 visa is only up to 5 years. The J1 sponsor may cut short your J1 visa program for whatever reasons. And then again, maraming classification yon, no? When you actually talk about J1, hindi lang naman teachers ang available sa J1 eh. Nandyan din yung mga trainees, nandyan din yung mga HRM communities. They are also doing the J1 visa program, right? And again, the hiring season is anytime, depending on the needs of the US employers. H, on the other hand, is up to 6 years. So, again, nakalimutan ko lang, on the J1, if you actually notice that for the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, the US Department of State has actually extended that to additional 1 to 2 years. So, may makilala kayo na nagkaroon ng 6th year or 7th year. It is primarily because of the pandemic that happened. But generally, ang J1 mo dapat 5 years lang. H, on the other hand, is up to 6 years. So initially, pag nag-apply ka ng H, you will be given 3 years validity, and then the employer has the option of giving you an increment of 1 year, or pwede nilang i-apply din ng 2 years, basta ang maximum stay mo is 6 years. And then, the hiring season for the H, depende kung ang employer mo is cap exempt or subject to cap. So, when you actually say to subject to cap, there are only 85,000 H1B visas available per year. So most private employers, including mga private schools, they have to wait between March and April and go through the lottery. Doon sa 85,000 na yon, 65,000 are basically for the bachelor's degree holders. So yung 20,000 are reserved for master's degree or doctorate degree. So depende yon, no? So again, alam ko na may nagre-reach out sa amin and their employers are actually private school teachers. So when your employer is a private school, unfortunately, you need to go through the lottery and you have to wait until March and April to be picked in that lottery. And even if napili kayo dun sa lottery na yon, your first day of employment is October 1st. So you really have to make sure that when you're talking to the employer, alam nyo kung private institution yon or public institution yon. Kung public school naman siya, then they have the opportunity to be cap exempt. So, ibig sabihin, hindi sila kinakount doon sa 85,000 na yon. So, the advantage of that is basically they can hire teachers anytime and then they just have to comply with other requirements. And that is a conversation we need to have with the employers. Intent. So, pag J1 visa holder ka, kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, no? Hindi pwedeng magsa-sign up ka ng J1 but then ang intention mo is hindi ka na bumalik. And this is already a tip for you, yung mga may schedule na ng embassy interview. If the question of the consular officer will ask you na, hey, do you intend to permanently stay in the United States? Your answer should be no. Because pag sinabi mo, meron ka ng intention na magstay permanently in the US, your J1 visa could be denied. No? Kasi the J1 visa is not a permanent visa. It's a non-immigrant visa. It is an exchange visitor visa with the intention na after ng program mo, dapat uuwi ka. H, on the other hand, does not have that restriction. So even pag mag-interview ka, tinanong ka ng, meron ka na bang intention hindi umuwi? Yes, that's allowed for the H visa. Okay? Second, on the J1 visa, you are subject to the 212E. So for those people who have not heard about 212E, this is equivalent to saying you are subject to the 2-year home residency requirement. Kagaya na sinasabi ko, after nung 5-year term mo, you really have to go home and stay in your home country or your last country of residence. Example, if you obtain your J1 visa while teaching in Thailand, then you can go back to Thailand and comply your 2 years home residency requirement there. So H doesn't have that requirement. So even if you obtain your H in Saudi Arabia or in Thailand or in the Philippines, again, pwede ka na magtuloy-tuloy eh. You don't have to go home. So waivers are generally required for the J1 visa subject to the 212E, but that is not a requirement for the H. And then, pag nag-a-apply ka ng H, may tinatawag tayong labor condition application. This is a process that your employer needs to apply with the US Department of Labor. Ano bang purpose nun? Ang purpose nun is for the US employer or for the Department of Labor to certify that there are no available applicants for the offered position, whatever that offered position on the H visa. Okay? So, yun yung major difference mo within the J and the H. So, tingnan muna natin dito kung may mga nagre-raise na ng questions, ha? And then we'll try to answer them. How is the type of visas determined by the U.S. employer specific school district? Is it based on applicants' credentials? Very good question, no? We will talk about the challenges on the H environment now in the United States because in fairness to the J1 visa marketers, they actually did a good job of educating the school districts on the J1 visa program, but not the H program. But to answer your question, how is the type of visas determined? The straight answer to that is kung anong alam ng school district. And majority of the school districts, ang alam lang talaga nila na visa is the J visa. We've talked to a lot of school districts na wala talagang idea kung anong pwede nilang gawin. And that's the reason why we are actually educating school districts. No? So again, to answer the question, it really depends kung ano yung alam nila na visa available. Kung may budget ba sila in terms of supporting the J1 visa, the H visa, or the green card application. So it really depends. But at the end of the day, it's the school district that decides for as long as they are aware kung ano yung mga options nila. Hello, Lens Bello from Cebu. Mga Bisaya sa ating dako, no? So feel free to ask the question. So mga Bisaya, thank you and for watching. We have also from Starwheel. Attorney Nick, I have a ban in the US that will expire in November. Should I apply in March? I have teaching licenses in the US. I'm planning to apply for the H1B. So, Starwheel, I would recommend that you reach out to us to talk about the ban. So, since I don't have the details of the reason bakit ka na ban, ilang years ba ang ban mo, and so on and so forth. There's more to discuss about your concern. So, reach out to us. But we have cases before na halimbawa, yung mga H kasi, may limit siya up to 6 years. So, after the 6 years, they have to go back to the they have to go out of the US and stay outside the US for at least 1 year. Okay. So, but very rare yung cases na yon. Kasi what we actually do with employers is to educate them na yung H, before tayo aabot dun sa 6 years, kung okay naman yung performance ng employee nila, then might as well offer the green card application to them. So, so as far as yung mga people that I've encountered, yung mga napapauwi ng H are yung employers na hindi nila alam na dapat pala nag-apply na sila ng green card application during their 4th year or 3rd year so that hindi na sila mag-go through on the 3rd H1B renewal and so on. So, but then again, if if the candidate is basically eligible for green card, we encourage employers to apply for the green card application when they are already entering the fourth year of their H visa. So they don't have to worry about the 6th year maximum term of the H. So again, Starwill, I would really recommend that you reach out to us and set up a consultation so we can actually talk about your case. No? So, but we have again a case where kailangan niya mag-comply ng 1 year doon sa maximum sa 6 years niya. Pwede naman namin i-apply yung age for as long as malapit na kami doon sa 1 year ban niya na compliance. So, there are ways to actually address and to determine the proper timing. And again, for your question, Star, well, I cannot answer that unless I know more information about your case. Marvin Tandas, tribal schools po ba, private or public? So, tribal schools is basically a public school, though they are actually not reporting to the U.S. Department of Education. They are actually reporting to the Bureau of Indian Education. So, in a way, for H1B purposes, you could basically argue that they are actually part of the public school system, and chances are they could actually be cap exempt, provided that they comply with the two requirements na dapat tax exempt sila, which is chances are they are tax exempt, and then meron silang affiliation agreement with a higher education institution. So once ma-comply nila yon, chances are they will be cap exempt. And we've actually assisted a lot of tribal schools into the H1B cap exempt status, and they were able to successfully bring in teachers on H1B. Another question, J1 not subject to 212E, but why is J2 are subject to it? Possible po ba na makakuha ng waiver? Okay. So, again, recommendation ko, you have to set up an appointment because you are actually taking a risk here. So, when your visa is actually noted or stamped not subject to 212E, but yung pamilya mo are subject to 212E, so that there is a big chance na yung stamp mo mali or yung pamilya mo na stamp mali. So when you actually try to apply for the H1B, then the reviewing officer ng application mo could actually look into the program and then titingnan kung saan ba doon ang tama. Then it is highly possible that baka ma-revert yung not subject to 212E to subject to 212E. So recommendation ko kablasanon to set up an appointment with an immigration attorney so that you will be guided. Sir Pete, very good question. So it used to be that nurses actually apply for the H1B status, but unfortunately, there is a ruling that nurses cannot be hired on H1B except for the specialty nurse. So ICU nurse or mga dialysis nurse, yun pwede yun. But for purposes of this application, I would say that nurses in general no longer fall into the H1B. If ngayong 1 year ka pa lang sa US at sinabi ni employer na H1B ka, pwede ba yun? Depends. So kung J1 visa holder ka and subject ka to 212E, then you are not eligible for H. But there is a slide there. Pag hindi ka subject to the 212E, yes, there is a possibility that you might be able to change status from J1 to H. Hi Dina. Dina is my classmate in college. Musta ba? Okay, so Starwill, again, I would really recommend that you set up an appointment. Jess, we are planning to apply for a waiver for next year. Malaki po ba chance ng dalawang American citizen child? Depende, boss. No? It's not the number of children, the US citizen children. It's basically the hardship that you will go through. So I will have a Facebook Live next week to focus on the J1 visa waiver. So stay tuned for that. Jeneline, until September lang po ba ang pag-alis ng mga J1? The J1 has a strict cut-off, no? So may mga time limits kasi ang schools as to when they could actually bring in J1 program. So I would recommend that you work with your J1 sponsor kung kailan kayo pwede pumasok. Cheryl, I am J1 teacher and this is my fourth year. Kung mag-offer ba ang district ng H1B, can I start the processing po? So again, depende kung subject ka or not subject ka to 212E. So going back to my presentation here. Pag J1 visa holder ka, can you accept jobs outside of the J1? So, well, it depends on your employer and your J1 sponsor if they will allow you to work for somebody else. Unfortunately for the H is an employer-specific visa. So, ibig sabihin, is si employer A ang nag-process ng visa mo, you cannot work for employer B unless employer B also applies for the H1 for you. And again, don't try to violate that because makikita yan ng USCIS and might have a problem for you when you apply for H1 extension or when you will apply now for the green card application if that is the intention of your employer. So again, ang importante lang is kung mayroong second employer who will be willing to sponsor you an H, make sure na nagpaalam ka rin dun sa original petitioning employer mo kasi again, they are the ones who actually petitioned you first. So I think by courtesy lang, sabihan mo muna yung first employer mo para mag-guide ka lang din accordingly. So this is very important though when you decide to apply for an H. So under the J1 visa program, ang tawag ng mga dependents yung J2. Ang tawag mga dependents ng mga H, H4. So the J2 dependents, spouse mo, yung mga anak mo na 18 years old or above can basically apply for work permits. And then being or having a work permit, it doesn't matter kung anong klaseng trabaho ang trabaho nila, right? So halimbawa, if they are a teacher and they haven't had the J1 visa, once meron silang work permit, they can still work as a teacher. Or ayaw na nilang maging teacher, they actually want to work for something else, they can also do that. So kung yung mga anak mong 18 years old, they can actually work part-time while attending schools, or they can also work full-time by virtue of the work permit. And that's the good thing about the work permit. H4, on the other hand, generally cannot work. So, alam ko na yung iba sa atin dito na may J1 na sobrang excited na mag-H because nga, number one reason, walang restriction ang H to applying for the green card. But sometimes, hindi nila alam na pag na-change ka from J1 to H, hindi na pala pwedeng magtrabaho yung anak mo or yung asawa mo, and then they realize that it's affecting their financial condition. So again, when you make the decision of converting from J to H, make sure that you have your own calculation on how it will affect your financial situation, especially if nandito na kayo sa United States, in the US. Okay? So again, yung H4 dependents mo, while they may not be able to work, at least they will be able to apply for a driver's license or attend schools for as long as they don't work. So, again, ito yung mga tanong kanina, no? Na pag J1 visa holder ba ako, pwede na ako mag-apply ng H. You have to look into your passport or your DS 2019. If those documents say that you are subject to, then again, you cannot apply for H or you cannot apply for the J1 visa. You cannot even apply for a green card. So you have to obtain a waiver. Pero pag hindi kayo subject to 212A, and then if your employer is willing to apply for the H for you, yes, you can basically address that or actually apply for that. But I would recommend that consult with the immigration lawyer muna. You could basically give our contact information to your employer, and then we would actually set up a meeting with your employer or any immigration lawyer near you so that you will be guided accordingly. So, I think that's the end of my J1 to H1 application. So, ito yung mga hinahanap ng mga employers, no? Now that they're actually being educated about the H1 visa as an option, immigration option for teachers in the US, they would want to basically convert J1 teachers into an H1 if number one, they are not subject to 212E. Kagaya na sinabi ko kanina, if you are subject to 212E, then you cannot apply for the H unless you either comply with the 2-year home residency requirement or you already have obtained a waiver. Other than that, then you really have to face the reality that you might be going home after your fifth year on a J1 visa program. So, again, babalikan na naman natin itong mga questions dito. before we will proceed with the age conversation. Lens Bello, how to apply for FCE. Uh, Kimberly will be able to discuss that in a bit. So, okay, nasagot ko na yun kanina. So, we have here a question. Pwede ba isama ng teacher ang kanyang minor na anak kung siya ay matanggap na magturo sa US on H1B at paano po mag-apply ng FCE? Okay, so again, derivatives of an H1 are called H4. Ang H4 na yon includes spouses and unmarried minor children. So if they are below 21 years old, they could basically go with the H1 to in the US. Paano mag-apply ng FCE? In the next slides, Kimberly will be able to explain that on her slides. Don, once given the H1 visa and decided not to accompany my dependent yet, is it okay po apply? Yeah. Hindi naman kailangan na kasama mo agad yung pamilya mo, no? So pwedeng ikaw muna mauna and then to follow sila later, whatever is convenient for you, for whatever considerations you are taking. Zarina, pwede po ba mag-apply attorney as elementary teacher, 15 years teaching experience? Okay, so ma'am yung sa eligibility natin, I think you could basically send an inquiry to Nicholas Caracal na Facebook Live. So the team of Ital, Kimberly, and Cristel could evaluate your credentials and then they will be able to guide you if qualified ka to get an H1B offer. Jeneline, pwede po ba magka-green card ang J1? Well, it depends, no? So, if you are not subject to the 212E, your employer might offer you the green card, but kung ang employer mo have not gone through the green card process yet, it could take long, no? So, for J1 teachers, getting the labor certification approved could take at least 2 years. And then only at that time, again, it's mahabang usapan, converting to J1 to a green card. So the common practice or pattern na ginagawa ng mga school district is mag J1 ka muna if you're not subject to 212E and then mag-a-apply ka ng H, then after the H, then you can apply for the green card. Mary Ann, posible po ba na ang J2 husband ang magiging H1B? Depends. Again, sinasabi natin dito, yung restriction ng J1, restriction din ng J2. So kung ang J2 mo, subject to 212E, then you cannot apply for the H. Pero kung ang husband mo, hindi subject to the 212E and they will be eligible for the H, then ang requirement kasi ng H mo, bachelor's degree. So, unahan ko na tong question na to ha. So halimbawa, if your husband is a teacher and the school wants to offer them the H1, then they may be able to apply. Pero kung kunwari, may marami kami sitwasyon na yung J2 mo, engineer, and then gustong i-offer ng H1 ng school, then hindi pwede yun. Kasi the job offer must be directly related to the formal education ng applicant. Okay? Yes, maraming employers from North Dakota, Sir P. Don, after I applied and get hired by the district, can you please tell when should I contact a lawyer? Boss, you don't contact the lawyer. It's the school or the employer who will contact the lawyer. Kasi H1B is not your application. It is an application of the employer. So again, if you happen to be to meet an US employer or school district pero hindi nila alam kung paano i-process yung H, you could basically send an email to them. You can copy us so we could actually set up a meeting together para ma-explain namin yung H1 process. At what are the school requirements to sponsor a J1 and also hire H1B? Pwede ba mag-hire ang private school sa US? So again, I actually mentioned this a while ago na pag private school ka, medyo mahirap yon kasi nga they will actually go to the lottery and then the timeline mo to file an H is basically March and April. So ang recommendation ko, really look for a public school because your chance of being hired on an H1 at any time mas mataas kaysa mag-apply ka ng private school. This is my second year teaching in the US. When is the best time to apply for a waiver? Again, next week we'll have our waiver conversation. We'll reserve that question at that point. Winnie, based on slide number 3, comply. Does that mean while complying the state and rule, hindi ba pwede mag-apply ng H? Very good question, Winnie, no? Kasi nga, kung halimbawa, nasa labas ka ng US and you are still complying with the 2-year home residency requirement, 2 years yon na hindi ka pwedeng bumalik ng US. Yung H1 kasi can be approved in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So what is the value of the employer filing the H1 for you kung hindi naman ka makakabalik in 2 years? So normally, kung you already have, you've been in contact with your previous employer, pwede mong i-encourage sila to apply for the H 2 ways. Kung gusto nila mag-save ng pera, kasi nga mayroong dalawang klase ang pagpa-file ng H. Meron kang normal processing at saka premium processing. Yung normal processing mo will take 9 months. So to answer your question, if you are subject to the 212E at ayaw gumastos ng school mo ng premium processing, then the best time to apply for your H is after your 1 year na nagko-comply ka ng 2 years home residency requirement mo. Pero kung if the employer doesn't care about paying the premium processing, then the latest that your employer should apply for your H will be after your 1 year and 10 months since lumabas ka sa US. Kasi at that time, on time lang siya na pagkatapos ng 2 years mo, meron ka tapos ka na dun sa 2-year home residency requirement mo. Okay? So again, just to take note of when you're talking to the US employer, talk to them, no, kung willing ba sila magbayad ng premium processing o hindi. So again, summarize ko lang. Kung ayaw nila magbayad ng premium processing, then the best time for you to apply is after a year ng 2-year home residency requirement mo. Pero kung willing naman sila, so you could basically apply before 2 months before mag-expire yung 2-year home residency requirement. Alan, posible po ba mapapapasok ako sa US as tourist tapos doon na mag-process ng J1 or H? If the question, boss, is posible ba yun? Yes. Is it an easy application? No. It's tricky, boss. Kasi when you are entering the United States on a tourist with the intention na gusto mo na palang mag-apply ng H or green card application or mag-asawa, then that could be fraud. No? So, because the purpose of the tourist visa is to come to the United States to be engaging in a tourist activities, no? So, kung kunwari ang intention mo na pala is mag-apply ng H, and if the officer finds that out, then the officer could basically tag you as committing fraud by violating the terms of your tourist visa. Another question here. And I really hope that when I'm reading these questions, that you basically could see yourself being in that situation because this could also apply to you. So at least alam nyo na rin kung paano gagawin, no? Kung if you fall into that situation. So we have another question here. Decided isama ni teacher ang minor niyang anak, kaso walang spouse si teacher, single parent siya. Sino maaring isama ng teacher kung isasama niya mga minors niya anak para mag-alaga? Okay, very good question, boss, no? The United States is not a country that accommodates helpers. Okay? So, kung gusto mong may sasama sa iyo mag-alaga, then you have to file a petition for a caregiver. And that caregiver application could take 2 years. So, and this is a very difficult decision that parents, even yung may asawa, may tatay, may nanay, no? Kasi hirap talaga mag-alaga ng anak dito sa Amerika, no? How much more kung single parent ka, no? So to answer the question, no, you cannot bring anybody with you na ang purpose is mag-alaga lang kung makakuha ka ng J or H visa. So if you really intend to do that, then you have to file an immigrant petition for them. But kung J1 visa holder ka, and then uuwi ka 5 years later, I don't think you would be able to file an application kasi ikaw nga uuwi eh. No. So then how could you afford to pay for the caregiver? Kasi in caregiver dito, mahal din. No? Baka more than 50% ng sweldo mo sa J1, pupunta lang din doon sa yaya ng anak mo. Now, if you are okay on an H visa, again, you have to consider yung paying capability to pay mo. And then, maraming considerations eh. So, it really is difficult. To answer your question generally, I don't think it is wise for you to bring somebody na mag-alaga sa anak mo either on a J or an H visa. So you really have to take that and accept that once you decide to bring your children, talagang lagari ka doon, no? You have to work and then take care of your children or find means to have somebody maghatid sundo sa school or mag-alaga ng anak mo while you are teaching or working. Rina, kung mag-sponsor ang school pero J1 ka with 2-year home, okay, I think I answered that question already, no? So, review na lang natin yung slides mamaya. Need ba mag-practice and apply for the H visa? Depende sa state. And Crystal will elaborate more on that during sa slides nila. No? Again, thank you for raising these questions because we are actually learning as we read your questions. Leah, Lion. Ask ko po, if the district can wait for me, I got the visa approved last July here sa US Embassy Manila. H1B po ako, pero natatagalan po kami sa process ng POAA. First time ng district mag-direct hire ng H1B sa Pinas. New po to sa kanila. Nasa process po sila now, requirements ng POLO para sa verification. As of now, waiting pa rin po ako makomplete yung phase 1 ng POA. Okay, so I don't quite get the question. If ang question ba is gaano katagal yung pagkukuha ng OEC, this is the Overseas Employment Certificate. So we know that getting the OEC from POA takes time. So experience namin, it could basically take 4 to 6 months. We do assist school districts getting the OEC kasi kung hindi mo alam yon, medyo mabusisi yon. But I think the school districts naman are willing to wait for you kasi approved na yung H1 mo eh. No? So again, kung nahihirapan ka, you could reach out to us on the OEC assistance for as long as the OEC expenses should be paid by the employer. Hindi kayo pwede magbayad ng OEC. John, if J1 na si Mr. and Mrs. would like to apply H, okay, so again, balik tayo dun sa ano ha, once approved, din natapos naman ni Mr. yung 2-year, pwede naman si Mr. mag-apply ng H4. So again, whether J1 ka or J2 ka, if you are subject to, then both of you should basically comply with the 2-year home residency requirement before tayo mag-apply ng H1 or immigrant visa. Kablasom, ang process ba ng J1 to H? So yeah, wala namang discrimination kung Pinoy ka or ibang lahi ka as far as applying for the J1 and the H. I think what you are actually trying to drive at is pare-pareho ba kung kunwari ka J1 visa holder ka, no? And then meron kang kasamang Indian nationality doon sa school mo. Bakit mas mabilis kumuha ng Indian ng waiver kaysa Pinoy? Yes, that's the reality we are facing now, no? So people from Jamaica is a lot easier to get a waiver kasi acceptable sa kanila na mabigyan na ng H1 offer, pwede na sa kanilang bigyan ng no objection statement eh. But again, the Philippine government has their own rules and restrictions and requirements as far as granting no objection statement. We're gonna talk about that next week. But as far as the H1 process is concerned, pare-pareho lang lahat yun, regardless of nationality. Marlon, meron na po ako NMPED license. Do you cater application of New Mexico school districts? So pag-usapan natin mamaya sa next slide, boss, kung paano ka makakakuha ng sponsor. Okay? Marinel, wala po bang chance mag-work ang H4 kahit part-time lang? No. But there is an exception to that. So halimbawa, pag yung employer mo nag-start na ng green card application mo and your labor certification has been pending for 6 months, then you could basically apply for a work permit for the H4 dependent. Or pag approve na yung I-140 mo, pwede rin mag-apply ng work permit yung H4. Could you please give us a timeline for H1B visa? If apply in February or March, how many months? So, yung processing ng H1, again, there's a lot of stages where the H1 process could go through, and it really depends on nasaan yung location nung aplikante, no? So let's just assume that the applicant is in the Philippines. So yung process na yon could take up to 4 to 5 months, pero yung application ng H1 alone can be approved in less than a month. Yan yung tinatawag natin kanina na premium processing. So if your employer is willing to pay the extra $2,500 na premium processing fee, then your application could potentially be approved in 2 to 3 weeks. Pero after it becomes approved, then mag-go through siya sa embassy, and that's where the potential delay could actually occur. So even if makakuha ka ng expedited interview sa embassy and you got your visa, then yun yung tanong kanina ni yung isang audience natin na approve na yung visa ko but we are having a difficulty getting the OEC certificate, OEC mo, the Overseas Employment Certificate from the POEA. Kasi yung process na yon could also take 4 to 6 weeks. So medyo matagal talaga. But to answer your question, it could take 4 to 5 months from start of H1B process for applicants located in the Philippines. Now, if you are applicant from Thailand, then you could basically get your or fly to the US mga 3 to 4 months. But if you are in the United States, 2 months lang, pwede ka na mag-work sa new employer mo kasi mabilis naman ang approval ng H1B. So, okay, namili lang ako ng question dito. So, namimili lang talaga ako ng questions, guys, relating to the topic. Ha? So, I really apologize kung hindi ko napili yung question outside of the topic. Waiver applications, we will have another session next week. Zara, paano po if H1B is single? Pwede po ba mapetisyon ang boyfriend or kasal po muna? Okay, very good question, Zara, no? So, you can only call somebody a dependent if there is a legal relationship between the two of you. So, kung boyfriend pa lang, unfortunately, in the eyes of immigration process, stranger yon. So, you can only bring that person if you are married. Then, that person become an H4 dependent or a J2 dependent kung J1 visa holder ka. But you are an H1B, so then pakasal mo na kayo, then pwede mo na siya i-petition on H4. Mel, after J1 sa ibang bansa ka nagturo, makakabalik ka ba sa US as J1? After J1 sa ibang bansa ka nagturo, makakabalik ka ba sa US as J1? I'm not so sure if I understand the question though. So, nag-J1 ka sa US, nagturo ka sa labas, then babalik ka na J1. So if I got that question right, then the answer is yes. Is that the ideal or practical way of doing things? No. Kasi, nag-J1 ka dati, tapos umuwi ka for the 2 years, nag-comply ka, kung babalik ka na naman ng J1, you might be subject to another 2-year home residency requirement. Ang recommendation ko, then mag-H1 ka na lang or talk to your employer or any other employers to sponsor you on an H instead of the J1 visa. But if what you're saying is, nag-J1 ako sa UK, for instance, then pwede ba akong pumasok sa US on a J1? Yes. But then again, nandun yung possibility na magiging subject ka or not subject ka to 2128. Don, what is the timeline of H1B processing? Again, it could take 4 to 5 months if you are applying in the Philippines. Is there a deadline when to submit the documents to USCIS? Depende kung ang employer mo is subject cap exempt, then they can actually file the application anytime. If they are not cap exempt, then they will go through the lottery between March and April. I've heard they need to receive it by April. So I presume, boss, private yung employer mo. Pag hindi sila private, maybe they are not aware that they could potentially get a cap exempt status. So yung school district, how long is the process if this visa? Can the district wait that long? So kung school district to, boss, chances are public school to. No. And again, I just don't know if they are aware of the cap exempt. So you could basically connect them to us or to any immigration law office to get guidance on how to get cap exemption. Jamir, why does processing polo takes time? Kasi boss, they are receiving also hundreds of applications every day, no? And they have limited resources then. So then it also takes time for them to verify documents. That's why it's taking them time. But again, you can call them though for them to answer that question. But again, to be fair with them, marami din silang pinaprocess na applications. Common law partnership is not recognized in the United States. Mel, ako po yung nag-ask kanina, yung 2-year home residency sa ibang bansa po, ako na-stay. Okay. So, again, depende yon, no? Kasi kung kunwari, you obtain your J1 visa in the Philippines, then you have to go back to the Philippines to comply with the 2-year home residency requirement. Kasi kung kunwari, bumalik ka ng Philippines, sorry, bumalik ka ng Thailand, pero nakuha mo yung J1 visa mo sa Philippines for 2 years, then that doesn't count. You really have to go back to the Philippines to comply with the 2-year home residency requirement. Jervel, pag ongoing na po yung 2-year home country ko, pwede na ba ako mag-process ng H1 by January 20 kahit end ang restriction by May 2026? Posible naman, right? So, ang ginagawa namin sa law firm, hindi namin schedule for interview before May 2026 kasi madi-deny ka lang din. And we have a client actually with that. So, hinintay talaga namin yung July kung kailan matapos yung 2-year home residency niya before namin na-schedule ng interview. Say sa Thailand na-grant ang J1, saan po ba ang home residency? So, ang rule says you could go back to your home country, which is the Philippines, or you can go back to your country of last residence, in this case Thailand. Then you could actually use the 2 years mo in Thailand to comply with that home residency requirement. May expedite ba ang processing in H1B? Yeah, yun yung sinasabi natin na premium processing. Then in that case, the USCIS will approve the H1B application in 2 to 3 weeks. I already submitted my resume to your official website. Are you the one who will look for the employer? We'll talk about that, boss, now. So in our next slides. So yeah, so we had our staffing agency. We are still waiting for some documentation, but we will communicate that as soon as we are ready. Rob, can we ask assistance from the agency here if my visa is approved already only for POSC? Can we ask for assistance from an agency here if my visa is approved already? Yeah, meron namang boss, yung mga POA registered companies, they could basically help you with obtaining the OEC. But that company will also still need to coordinate with Polo, no? So again, there are 2 Polo offices in the United States, one in Washington DC and one in LA. Okay, depende kung saan located yung school district. I've done with my J1212 rule. Can I apply for H1B? Yes. Pwede ka na mag-apply ng H. If you're applying for a J1 visa, then you need to look for a J1 sponsor. Unfortunately, at this time of the year, medyo mahirap na makahanap ng J1 sponsor, no? Kasi limited din yung J1 visa. So, okay, again, thank you guys. I'll go back to my slides. So, then let's talk about the H1B challenges. So, again, at this point in time, I will be calling in my resource speakers to basically answer your question related to the topic because they actually have experience dealing with these challenges. Okay, first challenge natin, H1B sponsor. So, kagaya ng mga kini-question nyo, mahirap makakuha ng H1B sponsor, no? Kasi, ang alam talaga ng maraming school districts, J1 visa lang. But I think for the last 2 years that I've been advocating on educating the school districts na mag-H sila over the J1, not because I hated J1, but because nga ang daming mga teachers na nagko-call sa office namin applying for the J1 waiver because they don't want to go home. And then the school districts, on the other hand, are complaining that after they love the teachers for teaching or working with them for 5 years, then they are confronted with a situation where they have to go home. So, yun lang naman ang restrictions or one of the negative attributes ng J1 visa. So, as much as possible, we encourage them to get the H1. But the H1 has to have their own challenges as well. Yun ang sinasabi natin, no? Mahirap makakuha ng H1B sponsors. But I think in this regard, we are actually gaining success for the last 2 years of educating H1B teachers. So, nakakatulong din na for the last 2 years, the Department of State has putting on strict restriction on lalagyan ng limit yung mga school districts na ilang percentage lang of their total teacher requirements ang pwedeng pumasok sa J. So in that regard, walang choice yung school district but mag-sponsor ng H. So at least nakakatulong yun, no? Some school districts have limited knowledge of the H1B process kasi ang alam nga lang nila is yung J1 visa. But then again, as proactively reaching out to them, nakakatulong na rin. No? Number three, employers are required to pay for all H1B related expenses. So, hindi pwedeng ang teacher ang magbabayad ng H visa mo, related expenses. So, kung ngayon lang sila mag-i-inquire, that's already too late in the game kasi tapos na yung budgeting process nila and their next hiring season is actually in February. So, doon sa mga nagtatanong kanina, kasi hindi ko na sasagutin yung mga related questions dito, if you really would want to basically look for employers, so I actually created the group called the Filipino Teachers in the United States, and there's about 25,000 members there, and I encourage the teachers or members ng group na yon na kung kunwari yung school district nila nag-hire ng teachers, then post there. Kasi doon natin malalaman or doon yung malalaman kung ano yung mga school districts that are actually hiring teachers on the H. At the same time, we are also activating the iDream America Staffing Services. So if you would want to actually be informed kung ano yung mga school districts hiring for H1B, we might start actually posting information there. But for the time being, we are actually posting more on the Filipino teachers in the US. Okay? So for the three challenges na I discussed, if you're looking for H1B employer sponsors, then the best way for you to be informed kung sino yung mga H1 sponsoring school districts, be a member of the Filipino Teachers in the US or actually like our page, the America Staffing Services page. Okay? And then we'll move on to the other topic. And Tal, can I actually, I introduce again sa iyo, Tal. So, ano ko muna si Tal. She can answer questions related to teaching licenses. So, go ahead, Tal. Sound mo, Tal. Nakamute ka yata. Nakamute ka yata, Tal. We cannot hear you. Hello? Tanggalin mo na lang kayo muna yung ano mo, yung okay?
Okay, hello? Can
Yeah,
you hear
okay.
me now?
Better. Don't use the okay, very good.
Yeah. So again, hi everybody. I am Krista Jen Carkel. So I am a licensing staff here in iDream America. So basically, I have me and my team have been assisting teachers getting their U.S. teaching license, specifically in New Mexico. And I actually am seeing Ma'am Mary Ann Walo, who is our client. We actually helped her get her New Mexico teaching license. So good evening po, ma'am. I am Crystal po pala. So yeah, I'm really happy to see you here. So basically, I will be explaining why getting teaching licenses is one of the challenges in actually getting the H1B visa. Okay? Now, just like any other country or yeah, in the Philippines, nire-require tayo na kumuha ng PRC license in order to teach. Now, it's also like that in other countries, especially in the US. You can't teach in the US pag wala kayong state teaching license. So that's why, and ang requirements per state in the US actually vary. So may ibang state na, mostly sa state ng US, nag-require sila ng SSN, US SSN. Kasi yan yung pinaka-main problem ng applicants, ng mga teacher applicants kasi wala silang US SSN, especially sa mga teachers na wala pa sa US. So, actually, marami din nag-PM sa amin, paano ba kukunin yung US SSN kasi may iba talaga na walang idea about that. And the US SSN, it is actually will be issued pag nandun na kayo sa US kung meron na kayong visa. Now, there are also states na would actually let you get a teaching license. For example, New Mexico, kahit wala kayong US SSN. However, most of the states in the US would really require you to have that. Now, hindi naman siya hindrance, although it's a challenge, hindi naman siya ganun kalaking hindrance. if wala ka talagang USSSN. You can, in order to get an H1B visa or an H1B sponsor. Although a lot of H1B employers would prefer someone who has a teaching license, of course, if you have really good credentials, and I would highly recommend really the FCE, which Kim will explain it later kasi lahat nasasagot na nila yan eh. So not having the USSSN is not really a problem. So again, I would like to emphasize that New Mexico is one of the states in the US that would not require you to have a USSN visa. Now, if you are actually interested in getting one, if you don't have yet, you can actually message us at Nicolas Caracal, the Nicolas Caracal Facebook account. Now, can we go back to the first slide po?
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, it's okay. Okay, now, for the New Mexico, they actually issue at most 9 years teaching validity for at least applicants who have more than 5 years teaching experiences. So that actually is pretty much good validity most compared to other state licenses kasi yung iba nag-i-issue lang din sila ng 2 years, 1 year, ganun lang din siya. Now, in terms of applying the license, we use the out-of-country reciprocity teaching license kasi yung ganun, in that case, hindi na kailangan ng applicant mag-take ng praxis, UEFL. However, meron pa rin iba. Again, just what I mentioned earlier, the requirement, the state teaching license requirement for each state varies. So may ibang state na magre-require talaga sila sa inyo ng TOEFL, praxis, and such that. But I would recommend you having or getting a license in New Mexico. And if you are really interested in looking for other licenses, you can make your research on that one. Now, for outside the US applicants, again, just like what I mentioned earlier, it is a struggle for them kasi wala nga silang US SSN visa. But just like what I said earlier, it's not an hindrance for you to find your employer kahit wala kang US SSN. As long as you have a good credentials and you get an FCE, I think that would be a very that would help you get an H1B visa even without a US SSN. Okay, can we move on to the next slide? So I hope I actually explained that well. So you can post your questions if you want something to clarify. Okay, for the outside of the US applicants, just like what I said earlier, you can actually get licenses sa New Mexico na hindi nagre-require sila ng US SSN. And yeah, New Mexico so far kasi New Mexico pa lang yung state sa US na hindi pa naghihingi ng US SSN when it comes to applying a teaching license. Now, actually, the teaching license actually affects your H1B validity. So if, let's say you got a job offer in South Dakota. Now, in South Dakota, they will require you to have a US SSN in order to have your license issued. However, they also allow the applicant to actually start the application kasi yung state license is requirement for the H1B visa. Now, yung gagawin ng applicant is nabigyan siya ng job offer, nag-process siya ng H1B niya, pero wala siyang license pa. So, ginawa niya, nag-start siya ng application sa South Dakota for his or her teaching application, pero take note, hindi pa yun na-issue. Kasi may issue lang siya once may US SSN. So mostly nabibigyan ng 1-year validity yung mga ganong klaseng cases kapag wala pang issue. Bali yung nangyayari, instead of having the teaching license as yung requirement for H1B visa, yung nagiging proof na nagbibigay na lang tayo ng proof na nasimulan mo yung teaching license mo. Kasi binibigyan mo ng intention na magtuturo ka talaga sa US and you're eligible to teach in the US because you have a teaching license. So I hope you get that idea. But to generally speak, to summarize it, sa mga ganyang cases, mostly generally, 1 year lang talaga yung nai-issue na H1B visa validity kapag gano'n ang mga case. So in mga cases naman na meron ng US SSN yung applicant, mas madali kasi sa kanila na mag-apply ng license. Mabibigyan sila ng 5-year license validity, renewable, gano'n. But for cases naman na wala talaga, again, it's not an hindrance for you to not get a H1B employer as long as you provide a good credentials as well as your FCE. You have a good chance. Now, next, for the applicants who are currently in the US, I would recommend, kasi most of our applicants, kasi meron din kami mga J1 na applicants kami, So ang ginagawa nila kasi subject to 212E sila, we would advise na habang nandun pa kayo sa US, kung pwede nyo i-process yung license nyo, gawin nyo na. Kasi mas madali mo i-process yung license mo kung nasa US ka kesa naman uuwi ka pa ng Pilipinas. So basically, may USSSN ka na. So kunyari, nagtuturo ka sa nagtuturo ka sa North Dakota, tapos gusto mong lumipat ng South Dakota. So mag-research ka na, gawin mo yung part mo, gumawa ka ng research, anong pwede mong gawin para kumuha ka na ng license while nandyan ka pa sa US. Kasi nga, mas mahirap kung babalik ka pa sa Philippines, doon ka pa kukuha ulit ng license mo. Now, I think that sums up actually my explanation. Just so may kanina nagtanong about sa TOEFL and praxis. Again, it varies from state to state. So may state na hindi nagre-require kasi as long as valid ang PRC license nyo. So mostly we process the PRC license and we highly encourage to renew your PRC license. Kasi so far, yung PRC license, it actually answers everything pinoprovide na nila yung kailangan ng yung USA. Meron tayong passage course and everything like that. Make sure lang na renewed yung license nyo at valid siya from time to time. Kasi hindi pwede na hindi ka mag-a-apply ka na hindi valid yung license mo. Hindi yun pwede. Kasi ang mangyayari nun, mag-a-apply ka talaga ng praxis and all of that. Pero again, it varies from state to state. So in Arkansas, they would actually encourage applicants to take their TOEFL kahit nandito pa lang kayo sa Philippines. So kung kaya nyong mag-take ng TOEFL as early as now, I believe na meron tayong mga schedule niyan. I would advise that you take the TOEFL as early as now. So the praxis, again, it depends on the state requirement. So just do your research. That would be my very, very advice for that. Okay, I think that's for my explanation on this slide. Do you have any questions I could answer?
Okay, Tal, tanong ko lang muna sa'yo. So just to summarize yung one basic question lang. If I am a teacher outside the United States, and of course I have no idea where the state is and so on, as far as going through the process of obtaining a state license, sa experience nyo, anong state ang pinakamadali?
Yeah, just like what I said earlier, New Mexico talaga yung pinakamadali i-process. Kasi
Right.
nagde-take lang din siya ng 2 to 3 months. 3 months na yung pinakamatagal. Pero depende pa rin yan sa speed ng applicant natin.
Okay, and we will talk, si Kim, which will be the speaker in the next slides, will explain to you bakit namin ini-encourage na kumuha na kayo ng license ngayon, right? Kahit wala pa kayong job offer. And just like what Ital said, generally, ang New Mexico issues 9 years validity of the license. So you really have ample time to basically look for an employer who will offer you an H1B kasi ang taas ng validity ng New Mexico teaching license. So again, thank you Tal for talking about the teaching licenses challenges and the recommendation. Before we end the conversation now, I will summarize ano yung recommendation natin sa mga viewers natin ngayon to at least help them increase their chance of getting an H1B offer. Okay? Thank you Tal. Kim, you're next.
Okay.
Kim? Babaan mo lang yung volume mo para hindi siya mag-feedback.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Kimberly Shane Caracal, and I'm going to discuss the. I'm going to discuss the employer preferences. Okay. Okay. These are the things that you must prepare, and your employer will look for these credentials. Okay. Please be reminded that the immigration process is long, and they want the teachers now, so it could take 2 to 5 months for PH applicants. Okay, what are the documents or credentials you need to prepare when the employer wants an interview with you? Okay, first is the state license. Just like what Miss Ital mentioned earlier, that's how important state license for your interview as well as for your H1B visa. Okay, next one is the FCE. What is FCE? FCE is the Foreign Credential Evaluation. It is an evaluation where it compares your degrees here in Philippines if it's equivalent to the United States of America, just like your degree, your bachelor's degree or your master's degree. So for example, your degree here in Philippines, i-compare nila yan if yung kinuha mo na bachelor's degree dito sa Philippines ay equivalent ba doon sa United States? And what are the purposes or benefits of FCE? Actually, you can use the FCE not just for the hiring process, but also for admission. For example, gusto mo rin mag-aral doon. Isa din kasi yun sa requirements ng school. So that are the purposes of the FCE. Again, FCE, please be reminded that the FCE is not an assurance for you to get hired, but you get a higher chance to be hired. The same with the teaching license. Employers prefer applicants na merong US state license, but hindi po ito assurance. I just want to remind you, hindi po ito assurance na maha-hire kayo. It will just give you a higher chance dahil yung FCA kasi kailangan kasi yan ng employer kasi mostly yung mga questions ng employer about your degree is nasasagot na doon sa foreign credentials nyo or evaluations nyo. So, it is better to have FCE as well your US state license since those are one of the requirements for your H1B visa. So, but if you don't have FCE for now, do not worry because we can assist you to obtain that. Just please send us a message on our Facebook account, which is the Nicolas Caracal, and you can message us for that. Okay, next is the lastly is police clearance such as the NBI. So of course, we will be sending your credentials to our employers. We will make sure that we will send the best applicants. Also, yung mga applicants, of course, na merong clear backgrounds. Kasi hindi naman pwede na mag-send tayo na may mga records, of course. And okay, for the recommendation, be proactive. Don't be the cause of the delay of your application. Okay, gather your documents as soon as possible. So these are the documents you need to prepare. Number 1 is the FCE, gaya na na-mention ko earlier. And number 2 is your notarized certificates of employment from your school or yung employer nyo, kung ano yung employer nyo ngayon. And next is your diploma as well as your TOR or the transcript of records and valid PRC license. Valid means hindi po expired. And also your US state license. Gaya ng na-mention again ni Miss Ital, ganun po ka-important ng state license dahil mag-vary po yung validity ng H1B nyo kung ano po meron na po ba kayong US state license at tsaka yung other requirements. So can we move to the next page or next slide?
So, the next page, before you close this slide, Kim, tanong ko lang muna yung bakit natin ini-emphasize yung certificate of employment? Kasi meron siyang standard details kasi, right? And hindi siya yung tipong nakasanayan kasi natin na paghihingi ka ng certificate of employment in the Philippines na, hey, this is to certify, that means, or Mr. Benito, hindi po pwede yun. The US immigration process requires certain format and information na kailangan nandoon sa certificate of employment for it to be valid, either for applying H1B or for the green card application later. So, for purposes of makuha nyo yung tamang format, Kim, would you like to actually share the link to the Filipino teachers in the US page? So for those who would want to get access to the proper certificate of employment, basically could access that file in that group, correct?
Yes, attorney.
Okay. So again, sinasabi lang natin, no? So majority naman ng mga school districts hindi naman talaga naghahanap ng state license. But ang sinasabi nga natin dito is this will increase your chance of getting an H1B sponsorship if you already have a state license. So klaruhin ko lang ha, if you are outside the United States and first time mo mag-apply ng teacher as a teacher in the US, then your best state that you could apply for is the New Mexico. No? And New Mexico is relatively closer to Houston, Texas border. So kasi yun yung palagi natin naririnig in the Philippines, right? Houston, Texas. So malapit na border yon sa magkatabing states yon. So Connecticut is also offering, whenever there are applicants for teaching licenses, kahit wala kang US Social Security number, then basically they could give you a temporary SSN just for the purpose of going through the state license process. But then again, pagdating natin sa H1B, hanggat meron kang state license, 1 year pa rin yung validity na ibibigay sa'yo, kagaya na sinabi ni ni Kimberly at saka ni Ital a while ago, no? So, bakit ganon? Bakit kailangan ng teacher na I would prefer to have for applicants na meron ng state license? Kasi it boils down to cost eh. Na, so, kung 1 year validity lang ang ibigay sa'yo, pagpasok mo, 10 months later, mag-a-apply ulit ng renewal or extension yung employer. And to them, cost yun eh. And kung saan papasok yun, whether in the same school year yon or hahatiin ng dalawang school years, doon namin dinidiskartihan. We are actually working closely with your school districts paano nila ma-minimize ang impact ng the cost of the immigration process, no? So kaya habang nasa labas ka or wala ka pa na, hindi ka pa nag-a-apply, and if the school district learns that you already have a state license, then they would prefer you kasi nga mas makakasave sila. Kasi you don't need to apply for an extension or renewal anymore. And again, ito yung sinabi ni Ital kanina, no, na if you are already on a J1 visa and you are subject to 212E at hindi ka makakuha ng waiver, sometimes you have to accept that reality and then prepare for have a better chance or bigger chance of getting an H1B visa the next time that you come back, no? So habang nandito ka nga, kailangan natin na mag-apply ka na kung saang state ka gusto mag-apply o mag-work 2 years later. So I will summarize the recommendations before we end the presentation today. But thank you, Kim, for explaining this slide. So we go to the next slide, and then we'll go over the questions later.
Okay, so I'll be discussing the important factors. Before you sign or accept a job offer, I want you to do a research for this following information here. And again, job offer, kapag yung employer ay nagbigay na ng job offer sa inyo, so you have an idea na kung ano yung state na pupuntahan mo o yung kung saan ka mag-work doon o mag-teach. So first, you have to do a research for the cost of living. Kung ano yung state na napunta sa'yo, you need to do a research kung ano yung cost of living doon. Since meron ng job offers, of course, alam mo na yung salary mo. You have to do research about the housing, about the rent, of course, also the transportation, and etc. Okay, number 2 is the work culture. Also, you need to do a research in terms of education system. Kung ano yung education system ng US compared to Philippines kasi sobrang iba ng differences natin. Also, their workload, their work schedule. And if you're part of the Filipino teachers in the US page, meron isang teacher doon na nag-post na nakakarating na niya sa US within 2 weeks, but dahil na culture shock siya, she badly wants to go home. So, kailangan natin maging prepared doon, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Kasi hindi po madaling magturo sa US. So, I want you to be prepared for that and aware for that. And next is the crime indexes. Ito po yung mga crimes na kailangan natin also to do research. Kung ano po yung mga possible o laging mga crime na nangyayari doon sa state na pupuntahan mo. Since meron naman tayo social media ngayon, news, you can do research about that. At least aware naman kayo na pag napunta kayo doon, hindi naman kayo mabibigla na meron palang ganun na mga krimen. And lastly, the accessibility to hospitals, transportation, housing, food, and other basic needs. So that's all. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, and thank you, Kim, for that. No, so again, ang advocacy ko naman when I actually created the Filipino Teachers in the US page about 2 years ago or 1 year and a half ago, is basically to educate and teach aspiring teachers na gustong pumunta sa US. So if there are volunteers out there na nanonood ng video natin ngayon, we are actually planning to set up another Facebook Live. The topic of that is to share your own experiences kung paano mag-adjust, paano yung teaching strategy ninyo sa US that you were able to adjust quickly. So please send us a message that you are willing to be part of that panel. Para matulungan na rin natin yung mga teachers na gusto magtrabaho sa US to be better prepared coming to the US, no? So I will announce that in the Facebook page. And again, if you are willing to be part of the panel who would want to share their experience, their struggle, their challenges, or their wins, or their success teaching in the US, we would welcome that. And we plan to have that Facebook Live within the month. para lang din makatulong sa mga kababayan natin. So again, thank you, Kim. And the next one will be the last slide, part pa rin ng recommendation natin. And Cristel, you wanna take the lead?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Crystal and I will be um, talking about the interviewing tips. So, first of all, let's have a good internet connection. So, kaway-kaway naman dyan sa mga gumagapang na internet connection natin na.
Okay.
So as we all know, most of the interview is online, and that we have to make sure that our internet is stable. While we can't always predict what would happen, there is a reason why we are given a scheduled time. Also, interviews usually have a specific time frame, which is why having an unstable internet connection would mean that it would consume your time, which is why you need to have a backup in case your connection is interrupted. Furthermore, having an unstable internet connection does not excuse you to miss your interview. If it really is that bad and you can't find any alternatives, then you have to email your interviewer about your situation. But do note that doing this will either push your interview back or you won't be entertained anymore. So which is why we have to make sure na ang internet natin is always stable. And if not, then dapat meron tayong alternatives and backup for in case of emergency lang naman. So the next one will be having a good lighting. Um, for those who don't know, lighting actually changes a lot when it comes to the interview. Having a bright and clear lighting enables the interviewer to see how well. It also gives them the impression that you are confident and prepared. In contrast, if you conduct an interview in a dark area, you could have a gloomy outlook, which would make the interviewer feel that you are not confident or that you are hiding something, which you want to avoid. You want to make sure that that when you are in an interview, you are staying in a bright area that has a good lighting. So the next one would be to check your camera and sound system. Before the interview, you have to make sure that your camera and sound system is working well, so that also your microphone too. It's also the same as having a unstable internet connection. You want to make sure everything is working well to have a smooth sailing interview because every second counts when it comes to interview. So next one is don't be late. I think that's pretty self-explanatory na naman. Being late would give a bad impressions to others. It would also mean that you are not willing or that you're not that committed to this interview. And being late would also mean that you might not be entertained anymore because again, time is precious and there are other things that could be done than waiting for someone who cannot commit, diba? So make sure that you are early it is recommended to be at least 10 minutes earlier than your scheduled time. Being early would mean that you are giving a good impression that you are interested and that you are willing to commit. In cases where the interviewer comes early, you are the one waiting than the other way around. Guys, with this, I actually have an experience when some of the interviewee would come in t-shirts and like in a bright colored t-shirt, sometimes graphic shirts. And let's be honest, that's not really the impression you want to give to the interviewer because it means that you really don't want or that you are not prepared and you don't want to give that impression. So a tip for this, it is better if you are in a business attire. That is usually the go-to for interviews. And it would also make you look clean, professional, and that you are serious about the interviews. So again, guys, please don't wear any t-shirt with bright colors and graphic designs because you want to be taken seriously. So you have to dress the part. And again, it would be just to impress, so to speak, have a good impression. And then lastly would be to speak clearly and with conviction. So this is the most crucial part of the interview. You want to leave an impression to the interviewer. You want to make sure that they see you as someone confident and knows what they are doing, which is why you should speak clearly and with conviction. So the thing is, since you are only given a short amount of time in the interview, you want to make sure that you speak in a short but concise manner. So you have to go straight to the details of what the question asks you and don't add things that are not related to question. For example, if he asks who like talk about yourself, you're not gonna talk about na I was like this, uh, when I was a child, I used to no, that's not part of the question already. You have to make sure na kung ano ang gi-ask, yun lang ang isasagot niyo po. So the reason for that is that if you add a lot of stuff that is not related to the question, then you would only waste time and it would make your answer dragging. And again, if you waste time, it means that there are less chances for you to answer other questions. And yeah. So second is that I recommend that you practice speaking and answering before the interview. For example, you could research on YouTube to see how they do it, or maybe you could search for possible questions and answer them just to get a feel of it. But please don't make a script to answer the questions. And by that I mean that you shouldn't make a script that you would bring during the interview so that you would just read them, because the interviewers would know. They would know that you are reading a script, and then sometimes it's better to have a free flowing kind of a conversation with the interviewer, because if you have a script, oftentimes if the interviewer would ask you something that is not part of your script, you would panic, and sometimes that would lead to you stuttering, or maybe you would forget everything and have a blank mind, so to speak. Ganun. So it would be better to have a script and then prepare everything beforehand.
Did we lose her?
Familiarize yourself with the questions and maybe come up with some. Another thing to point out is that since you are applying in the US, speak in English. I know not all of us are fluent, but let us remember that since we want to work in the US, you have to hello. Okay, and then lastly, you have to speak with passions. Show your interviewer that you want this job, that you love the career yourself, that you are the person that they are looking for. You want to convince them that that you are the right person, and that you have to speak well and confidently. I know that interviewers can be scary, and that most people everyone that you have what it takes to be the person that they are looking for. So, kumbaga, ito ang time na pwede mo ipakita sa lahat sa mundo na ikaw ang kailangan nila. So, for now, that's it. I hope that everyone would keep this in your mind for your next interviews. And yes, so yun lang po.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Okay, so I'm going back to the questions now, and if the topic pertains to Crystal, Kim, or Crystal, I will raise to them, but I will answer the question if it affects legalities. Okay, but that's basically the presentation slides we prepared for you. We are now just going to go through the questions and then wrap it up. And again, thank you for joining us here. So, Carlene, I have some colleagues na approved na sa USCIS and embassy, pero pagdating sa polo, nagba-back out po ang school. Do you have any idea po what might be the reason? To be honest, based sa experience namin, no, wala namang dapat ikakatakot ang US employers pagdating sa polo. But we understand that when actually school districts deal with a lot of paperwork, because there will be a lot of paperwork that the employer needs to fill out, doon sila nagba-back out. Sometimes, may mga requirements din ang Philippine government that they actually seem to be, oh, we don't provide that, we don't provide this, and that is very important na getting assistance from somebody who have gone through this process would help, kasi kung hahayaan mo yung school district na sila lang gagawa nito for the first time, it could be intimidating, it could be confusing. So, but to answer the question, wala naman talagang dapat ikakatakot kasi the polo really look into whether or not the employer exists, no? Kasi may mga cases before, hindi lang sa teachers, na nagpa-file ka ng application, then it turned out na wala naman palang totoong trabaho. That's another one of the purposes na ginagawa nila. So siguro maybe in the next few days, I would invite the Polo, Washington, and LA representatives natin to basically do the Facebook Live para ma-educate din tayo or kayo kung ano bang tinitingnan nila sa Polo, no? Again, if your school has difficulty obtaining the Polo, the OEC, again, they can reach out to us. We could basically help them out. But there is really nothing to be worried about going through the Polo process. So I hope that I answered that question. So then, Cheryl, in case po na kayo ang mag-process ng H1B, magkano po? And to be honest, we don't discuss with the teacher magkano yung H1B cost. Kasi hindi dapat ikaw nagbabayad nun eh. Dapat ang nagbabayad ng school. But we do discuss the cost structure with the employer. Okay? Ja, pwede po ba kami mag-apply ng H1B visa ng asawa ko separate para kaming teacher? Yes, boss. For as long as you will be eligible. Again, teachers in general are eligible for H1B. It's just a matter of finding the employer who are willing to file the sponsor for you kasi yung specialty mo is basically what they are looking for. Rob, recommend na agency pwede mag-assist lang ng Polo. We could assist you, boss. You can actually just send a message connecting me to your employer and we could basically assist them in the OEC kasi meron kaming affiliation with POA approved agency in the Philippines. Kasi kahit na meron kang POA registered agency in the Philippines, kailangan pa rin nilang magpadala ng documentation sa Polo either in LA or in Washington DC depending kung sinong may hawak ng jurisdiction na yan. Magnolia, isang online article quote, the 2-year period need not be unbroken stretch of time. An aggregation of 2 years in your home country can also suffice. So, mga J1 po, nagko-comply ng 2 years sa Pinas. Ano po ba ibig sabihin nito? Okay, what it actually means is that, halimbawa, pag kunwari, umuwi ka, no? So, tapos na yung J1 mo, 5 years ka na, and then umuwi ka ng Philippines, nagstay ka ng 1 year doon, again, nabobore ka na or nagigipit ka na financially, you actually end up magturo ka muna sa Thailand, no? Nagturo ka ng 6 months doon, bumalik ka na naman sa Philippines, nagstay ka na naman ng 6 months, then lumabas ka na naman ulit. So, for purposes of complying with the 2-year home residence requirement, ang ginagawa ng government is bibilangin lang yung actual days mo or months mo na nag-comply ka ng 2 years while you are in the Philippines. Yun yung ibig sabihin na it doesn't have to be unbroken. So, pwedeng putol-putol. What we will count for purposes of complying is yung equivalent na 2 years home residency requirement. Okay? I hope klaro na yon. Mary Ann, paano po December 20 nag-grant ang J1 at mag-expire ng 2023? Tapos na-extend ka ng 2 years? Extended DS, posible po bang magka-renew ng visa sa Pinas para magka-uwi? Yeah, so initially yung J1 mo 3 years binigay sa'yo, then you were actually applied for the 2-year extension. So at that point, yung initial DS mo, 2019, expired na pero gusto mong umuwi. May tinatawag tayong visa stamping. So pag uwi mo, kailangan mong magpa-schedule ng visa stamping interview at the US Embassy in Manila para pagbalik mo, may bagong stamp ka. So, to answer your question, yes, pwede pa namang umuwi for as long as before ka uuwi, magpa-schedule ka na sa embassy kasi alam natin na mahaba-haba ang pila ngayon sa embassy as far as the interviews are concerned. Rob, tanong sa aming H1B requirements namin, we are advised to apply license now and asked to have immigration letter to support the visa. Again, sa mga clients kasi namin, boss, ginagawa namin to eh, no? The applicant should not be worried about this kasi the law office should have given them guidance. Kasi kailangan talaga to, boss, when they actually prepare for either the H1 application process or at the interview sa embassy. Carmela, Spartan West, which one do you prefer? Either of those are actually good companies. So basically, they are legitimate, reliable providers naman ng foreign credential evaluation. We are under 2-year rule po, and we finished our 5-year contract in our previous employer in Ganado, Arizona. We just arrived here in the Philippines last July 2022. Kompleto po requirements namin for immigration process. Kailan po kami pwede mag-process? Do we need to wait for? Sa cases na ganito, boss, ang ginagawa namin or in-encourage namin is before you left, sana is we've talked to the school district kung pwede nilang isimulan na yung green card process mo. But since you are already outside the US, you may still contact them if they are willing to start the green card application for you. Kasi kagaya na sinabi ko kanina, the green card application could take up to 2 years. So by the time na matapos yon, baka may interview ka na sa embassy. Pagbalik mo, green card holder ka na nun. Or kung talagang wala pang plano mag-file ng green card application yung school mo, kagaya ng sinabi ko, after 1 year ng 2-year home residency requirement mo, you can start having the conversation ng employer mo. Kasi kung gusto nilang i-avoid yung paying ng premium process, they could start the application after your 1 year. Pero kung willing naman sila mag-file ng premium, then they could start the H1B process 1 year and 10 months doon sa 2-year home residency requirement mo. What are your thoughts po if a J1 teacher wants to apply for H1B? Is there a need to go home? Again, ang sinasabi natin, you need to know if you are subject to the 212E. If you are subject to 212E, there's no conversation about H1, J1 green card. Okay? Pag hindi ka naman subject, yeah, you could start that conversation kung pwede nang simulan ng H1 application ng employer mo. It really boils down to having an engagement or conversation with your HR or your superintendent or your principal para mag-lobby for you kung simulan na yung H1 mo only if you are not subject to 212E. Miss Gurley, hello Ma'am Gurley. Do we need eligibility status if you apply for teaching license in New Mexico City? No, not necessarily, right? Because even teachers outside the US could actually apply even if they are outside sa US. Ang kagandahan lang kasi ng mga nandito sa US is they have their social security number, mas mabilis mag-apply ng teaching license. Hindi lang sa New Mexico but any other state while you are in the United States. With regards to FCE, and Tal, I want you to answer this question. Which is preferable again, West or Spantran? I think we answered that. But based experience mo, saan ang mas preferred mo dyan?
I can answer that question po. In terms of FCE, preferable namin yung Spantran because mas cheaper siya compared to West. And in terms of the copy, yung sa soft copy kasi ng Spantran, you can use it as an official copy for your H1B visa. However, doon sa West kasi, if you're going to apply for H1B, yung requirements na ina-ask nila, if West yung evaluation nyo, they will ask for a hard copy just for an official copy doon sa H1B visa. And dapat yung FCE nyo pala ay valid. It means, mostly 5 years yung validity ng FCE nyo eh. You can ask your evaluator about that naman. And if you're asking, there's someone asking here about the SE. As long as the evaluator is under the NACES or what we call the National Association of Credential Evaluation Services, which you can check naman sa internet, sa website nila, if part ba ng member nila yung nakuha yung FCE evaluator, then it's fine. And part doon ng mga member are the WES, the SE, the ECE, the CARI, and the IACS. Members lang yun. Marami pang members nandun. So you can check it.
Okay, so yeah, I think you answered the question of, I had my FCE through ASI, will this be okay? So I think you said, for as long as it's valid, then it should be okay, right?
Yes.
Okay. So mayroong request dito, can we use the English language because not all of us are from the Philippines. So una, thank you for joining us. So this live is actually intended for Filipinos generally, but thank you for joining. If you actually notice through the screen, there are transcriptions of the conversation we have here. But if you have confusion or you need clarification, feel free to actually send a message to Nicolas Caracal Facebook page or Messenger. Kim or Ital or Cristel will be able to answer your queries. From Johnny, I already have a job order sa Texas, had all the requirements for J1. Unfortunately, declined to continue the process kasi strict po ang aking visa sponsor. So again, kagaya na sinabi ko kanina, at this time of year, medyo hirap na kumuha ng J1 sponsor. So, but you can have a conversation with your school district na if they cannot process you on a J1, they might probably consider you filing an H1 for you. Kasi nandun pa rin yun. They would still need a teacher and it's just a matter of time na ma-process yung H1 mo and you will be joining them. So, kausapin mo sila, Johnny. May expedite process po ba ang OEC? I don't think so. So again, it really depends on In fairness naman sa Polo, they actually process the application for as long as they are complete. No, so it's just a matter of making sure that the requirements are complete and that the forms are filled out and signed properly. And we just have to wait until the pila ka kasi nakapila talaga yon, just like any other offices, right? Kahit naman sa aming law office, we cannot process all applications at the same time because we also work on a schedule. So again, J1 is a challenge at this point in time. What is the cover of the employer will be paying the visa? Again, I don't want to discuss payment on the H1B process in this Facebook Live because we have that conversation with the employer. Only the employer can pay the H1B related expenses. So sinabi natin, I have a New Mexico license and FCE but have difficulty looking for principal interview. So kagaya ng recommendation ko kanina, just join the Filipino Teachers in the US Facebook page or our page, and then just follow some links there. You might submit the resume for consideration, just like what I said. Just join those Facebook groups and you might be able to find some sponsors for the H1. Once you receive your H1B visa, your next step is getting the OEC. Is this correct? How long to wait for the OEC po to receive? Are the US immigration aware of this long wait? As far as our clients are concerned, yes, they are aware. Most of them are disappointed, but what can they do, right? So this is a process that they need to comply. So sa clients namin, from the beginning pa lang, from the get-go pa lang, we already tell them that, hey, once the visa is processed, then they have to go through the OEC requirement. So I don't know how the other law firms handle that issue, but as far as the cases na hinandle namin, we educate the school districts that this could take long. And for people in the Philippines, they have to go through the OEC process through the POA. Clarice, good day. Pag nag-change ka ng residency from Philippine residency to other country, example, New Zealand, so magbabago po passport, need pa din ba mag-comply ng 2-year home residency requirement? It depends, right? Kasi in that regard, we need to look into the New Zealand J1 program. So ngayon, kung halimbawa, hindi ka subject to the 212E, then you don't need to comply with the 2-year home residence requirement. Pero kung merong ganon sa New Zealand, then we have to look into ano bang options nila to offer the waiver. And again, we'll talk about the waiver next week. You can raise this question again. I am in the Philippines na po, but I have a pending hardship application po ba? Let's talk about that next week. Carmela, I'm currently working in Saudi Arabia. Mas mabilis po ba mag-process ng outside? Yes. If you are applying for H1 outside the Philippines, you could basically save 1.5 to 2 months of your time waiting. And as a matter of fact, most of the school districts that we deal with prefer applicants outside the Philippines. Not because ayaw nila sa inyo, but because of the reality na they need the teachers now, but applicants in the Philippines could take additional 1.5 to 2 months after the visa issuance to get the OEC. So, kasi kahit Pilipino ka, if you are already flying from Thailand or Saudi Arabia, you don't need the OEC. Warning ko lang sa inyo ha, na yung mga taong nakakuha ng H1B, not from the Philippines, while you are on H1B, the moment na uuwi ka ng Philippines, you still have to get the OEC even if nagtrabaho na kayo ng H1 in the Philippines. So, in the US, don't ever fall into the trap of galing kayo sa Saudi Arabia, pumunta kayo sa US, o H1B na kayo, and you were able to teach for 1 year. Excited ka nang umuwi. Pag uwi mo, hindi ka pa nagpa-apply ng OEC. Talagang mas stranded ka in the Philippines. And we actually had visited the school districts in Virginia last month, and they actually shared that information that they have a group of teachers who obtained their H1 in the United States, go home, and then they were not able to come back. And that's something you need to really discuss with your HR if you obtain your H1B outside the Philippines, because you still have to go through getting the OEC pag uwi mo sa Philippines. Okay? Rob, can we use a dummy USA applied teaching license? Kasi ayaw. So again, boss, depende sa state yun, right? So, again, dummy is actually, they call it a variable. Is a number just for the sake of going through the application process. But for H1B application, kung papasa yun, you will only be given 1 year validity of your H1. Okay, klaruhin na natin to ha, Ronnie. I submitted my resume and other docs, attorney, but I don't receive any interview from your office even if I have a complete requirement. So, boss, kagaya ng sinabi nga namin, no, even if we are not advertising in our page or in our Facebook, maraming nagsisend ng resume sa amin. So, again, sa dami ninyo, depende din yun sa kanong needs ng school districts. And then, kailangan ding schedule yun. So, patience lang tayo, boss. No? Even people who are already in the H1B process, need to be a little bit more patient because process is a process, right? There is no, and again, I apologize if we are not that fast enough, but when the right time comes, somebody will reach out to you and schedule it. So good luck for your interview then, okay? Konting pasensya lang din. Finding application, again, just follow the Facebook page. Marami din namang nagpo-post doon ng mga employers or even members are actually posting that, hey, their school district is looking for teachers. Then maybe you could reach out to them and get direct contact so you could actually apply directly. So hindi naman to ang live natin is for the purpose of you encouraging us na kami lang magpa-process ng H1B application yon, no? So again, other members of the Filipino teachers in the US, and again, thank you for joining that group. It now has reached 25,000 members for sharing their information, experience of getting H1 or being able to teach in the United States. Patapos na tayo, guys, and I know gabi na sa Philippines, but again, thank you for staying in, tuning in, and staying with us for over an hour now. Hazel, what are the basis of 4 or 5 year extension in J1 visa holder? Are we allowed to transfer schools during this extension? If the question is, are you allowed to transfer school? Yes, but you need to coordinate with your J1 sponsor for guidance, no? So, ganun ka powerful ang J1 visa sponsor mo. Don't make any drastic decisions, transferring schools or resigning from your school without coordinating with your J1 visa because that might be problematic for you later pag hindi mo ma-maintain yung status mo. Azel, ilang months at ano po ba requirement from H1B change to PR? So, again, the conversation about H1 to permanent resident, your school district has to apply for the labor certification, and the labor certification could take 2 years. That is an application that your employer needs to apply. So don't worry about that. It's a decision that your school district needs to make. And then once they are ready, they will call you up. So the only thing that you could influence your school district is, kunwari, nagtuturo ka na sa kanila, no? And then you are already currently on age, then talk to your HR and influence them kung pwede na nila simulan yung labor certification mo, because yung labor certification could really take about 2 years before ma-apply formally yung immigrant petition mo. So again, it becomes technical, but again, don't worry about that for now. Kailangan mo lang kausapin yung HR mo kung kailan pwedeng simulan ang green card process mo. Winnie, for us who are willing to get teaching licenses while nandito po sa US, pwede ba makahingi ng list of schools or state na cap exempt? There is no such thing as list of cap exempt schools. No, that information is not really available publicly. So even sa amin, when our school, when some school districts reach out to our law office, we don't know right away if they are cap exempt or not. We have to go through the interview process with the superintendent and or their business managers or HR and assess if they would qualify for cap exemption. So yun yung sinasabi nga natin kanina na getting H1B sponsors is a challenge kasi hindi nga siya readily available if these school districts are cap exempt. Okay? So I hope I answered that question. It may not have answered 100%, but that's the reality in terms of knowing which school district are cap exempt or not cap exempt. If you have an H1B visa and you decide to go to another country for a short vacation, can you go to the US straight from that place you are visiting? Yes. Wala namang problema yon. Pag kunwari nga, no, so mayroon ka ng H1 visa, Let's just complicate your question. No? Halimbawa, nag-J1 ka and you were able to convert it into an H and you are in the United States pero gusto mong bumisita sa Thailand. From Thailand, pwede kang bumalik sa US diretso na walang problema. The problem that you could have is kung from Thailand, dadaan ka sa Philippines, then you will have a problem. Because the OEC requirement only applies for OFWs flying out of the Philippines. So, yun, pwede kang hanapan ng OEC. So, but again, for as long as hindi ka dadaan sa Philippines, you should be okay. I am a graduate of JD. Do I need to include the degree to my CV or not? So if Paniero, right? So if you are applying for a teacher, you have to show you all your degrees. Kasi hanapin yon, but is it relevant for the H1B application as a teacher? No. But if you're applying for a lawyer and apply for an H1B, then yes, you have to. Ronnie, can you help me to explain to the principal in Montana about H1B? Yes, boss. As a matter of fact, yun yung ginagawa namin. If your school district is not aware of the process, the requirements, or the timelines, as well as the costs ng H1B process, you could basically send an email to us, copying your HR or your superintendent, and set up an appointment with us so we could basically schedule a presentation with them. Okay? Medyo active to si Rabe. But again, I appreciate you asking the questions kasi everybody naman learns from that question. If you're an H1B holder sponsored by your present employer, until when will you be allowed to look around and change for another employer? Kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, H1B is specific to the employer. So if employer A ang nag-sponsor sa'yo at gustong kang pagtrabahuhin ng employer B, then employer B should file another H1 for you. The question now is, will employer A allow you to teach to employer B? Kasi now you are touching on the employer-employee relationship. So generally, yung employer A, again, they hired you. They invested time and resources to bring you into the United States. As much as possible, they want your dedication to their school. But if you are able to talk to your HR and explain to them the need, bakit kailangan mo magtrabaho ng isa pang work, and they allowed you, wala namang problema. Magkakaroon ka ng problema if they will not allow you. So again, it all boils down to your relationship and conversation with your HR or your superintendent or your principal. But walang restriction kung gusto mo mag-apply. There is no timeline kung kailan ka maghanap ng employer B for as long as magkaintindihan kayo ng current employer mo. A school district offered me a job in the US, but it is only good for 1 year. And I will be sponsored through H1B. Can I apply to another school before the contract ends? Good question, boss. No, I mean, hindi ko lang kung sino nagtanong kasi nga maraming Facebook user lang, no. So, it boils down to yung validity ng H1 mo. Okay? So, balikan ko lang yung question na para klaro lang ha. A school district offered me a job in the US but it is only good for 1 year. Are you talking about the contract of employment or are you talking about the H1 validity? So, kasi ang sinabi ko nga kanina, even if you are applying for H1B outside the US at wala kang state license, generally bibigyan ka nga lang ng 1 year validity. And then before your H1 visa expires, sa ginagawa namin sa client namin, 2 months before it expires, mag-a-apply na kami ng renewal or extension. So, necessarily, they have to renew their contract then. But what you are saying is, can I apply to another school before the contract ends? You should. Kasi, you cannot afford to be out of status eh. No. But, kung kunwari nga, boss, no? At applying for another employer, pag nalaman ng current employer mo, baka hindi ka na nga i-extend. Then, make sure that you maintain status. In that regard, I recommend that you consult with an immigration lawyer para mag-guide ka. Huwag kang pa dalos-dalos mag-decide, boss, in this regard. Kasi nga, it could potentially affect your status, immigration status. So, meron po bang bayad mag-consult ng school sa inyo? Depende po, ma'am, no? So, availability ko, and so on and so forth, right? So, my staff will be able to guide you magkanong bayad or may bayad and so on and so forth because we have guidelines that we have to follow. just connect us to your school district and my staff will be able to guide you in that particular concern. Mura lang naman ang consultation fee natin, no? And since H1B conversation could be shared by, halimbawa, apat kayong school teachers na trying to influence the school district. So kung ang consultation fee mo is 150, then you could basically share that cost naman. Hindi naman siguro ganun kamahal yun, no? For us to be able to talk to your school district. Is it possible to change J1 to H1B? Yeah, so basically, pwede yan. If you would want to go to the details of that, I answered that question, so maybe you can review the process now. Marvin, offer after po provide ng school yung tax exemption at yung isa pang requirement, affiliation agreement from them, ano po susunod? Then, if based on our assessment, those two requirements are complied with, then we file the H1 on cap exempt status, and then yun, tuloy-tuloy na yun, boss. So every application, you have to prove that the employer is H1B cap exempt. Don, advisable po ba na kunin ni J1 holder ang kanyang family by that time na stable na si J1? I don't think it's a question for, I don't know if it's an immigration related question, because I look at that question, ano pangalan ni Don, as a family factor consideration, right? Kasi ikaw ang magde-decide kung when is the best time or kung gusto mo bang dadalhin yung pamilya mo eh. Kasi kung ako ang in your situation, like primary consideration ko is costs. Ito yung sweldo mo, right? Kung dadalhin ko ba asawa ko, yung anak ko, kaya ko ba silang suportaan? Considering pag dinala ko bang asawa ko, kailangan ba niya magtrabaho? Yung anak ko, kailangan ba niya magtrabaho? Because on a J1 visa, very restrictive yung purpose ng work permit. The spouses and the children cannot work to support you financially. They are supposed to just providing support to you, no? Kasi pag nakita ng USCIS na ang purpose bakit sila kailangan magtrabaho is para tulungan ka financially, then the work permit may be denied. So again, to answer the question, boss, before you actually decide kung dadalhin mo ba yung pamilya mo, first consideration mo talaga is yung finances mo, no? If you think you can afford to support them, then maybe bring them in. Kasi nga, maraming pros and cons on bringing the family with you eh. Though, majority ng mga teachers bring their families with them. So, yun lang siguro ang kaya kong sagutin dun sa tanong mo. Ilodok, doktor na ako ngayon, no? Hi, Carly. How long does it usually take to follow to verify the application? Normally, again, maybe you can call them, no? I don't want to be the spokesperson of Polo. Mabilis lang naman. Again, sinasabi ko kung kompleto naman yung requirements at wala silang masyadong tanong. What is your number? Nakasulat naman dito sa screen natin ng number namin, boss. So you could basically reach out to us. The better way is basically sending us a message sa Nicholas Caracal or I Dream America Facebook group or sa Messenger or send us an email. Nelly, how long does it really take the process visa? Again, premium processing, 3 weeks. Normal processing, 9 months. So generally, lahat ng mga clients namin school districts will do the premium processing. But then again, if you are in the Philippines, the whole process could take 4 to 5 months. So you really have to take that in na hindi ibig sabihin na na-start na ng employer mo yung application ng H1, next month nandito ka na sa US. No, it doesn't happen. The reality is, if mag-file ng yung employer mo and you are in the Philippines, 4 to 5 months yon before ka pa magka-interview, before ka pa makakuha ng OEC mo. Myra, after matapos ang German program and the school ensures for H1B pagbalik sa US ng teacher, need po ba tapusin ang 2 years sa Pinas? Yun kagaya sinabi ko, no? Again, they could start the process after a year or 1 year and 10 months after you go back to the Philippines. Randall, good day. Out of the question for H1B, pwede po bang mailakad ang J1? I think I answered that question. So again, balikan ko lang ha, unless you have a waiver, there is no conversation about H1 or immigrant visa unless you obtain that waiver for J1 or J2 subject to 212E. Okay, so again, guys, I think I answered the relevant questions. Again, thank you very much. Say last na lang, Carlin, those who avail the premium processing po, how long does it get usually to take the process? So again, yung sinasabi ko, if you are in the outside, if you are in the Philippines and your employer started the H1B 4 to 5 months before kayo punta sa US. So, just to summarize the recommendations, and again, thank you, Crystal, Kim, and Christel for joining us with me today. Just to talk about the challenges, because the topic ngayon is how do you increase your chance of getting H1B sponsorship. Number one, join groups, right? So in this case, the Filipino teachers in the US is your best group that you could basically learn know kung ano mang success stories ng iba or your challenges ng iba or getting potential sponsors. You could basically get that, or you could also like our Facebook page, the iDream America Staffing Services. We might be able to share future H1B sponsors in that regard. The second issues natin is yung teaching licenses. So again, we really recommend if you are outside the United States, if you would want to increase your chance of getting an offer, then you could prioritize New Mexico because it's a lot easier to obtain the license there. You could basically get a 9-year license, and there's a lot of school districts in New Mexico offering H1B process. If you are given a job offer by the school district, then start that process kasi regardless of what you intend to do. Once your school district process the H1B process, USCIS will come back to you to say, have you started the licensing requirements? So again, once you start that, it could take a while and then you are adding to the delay now. So start that process the soonest time possible. If you are already in the United States and your J1 visa is about to end and you plan to stay in your state or move to another state, I would recommend that you either renew your J1B, your teaching license, or you might want to apply for other licenses sa ibang state na gusto mong lipatan. Okay? And lastly, um, just to summarize pa rin nung previous slide natin, employers prefer hiring people na mayroon ng license. They also prefer people who are on the United States or who are outside the Philippines kasi nga they would be able to save time. So the key here is actually be proactive, gather mo na yung mga documents mo. The FCE, the Foreign Credential Evaluation could also take time. Yung notarized certificates of employment could also take time kasi hindi siya yung tipong document na pwedeng ikaw gumawa, right? So, kailangan talagang notarized siya coming from your previous employer or current employer. So, might as well prepare that now. Again, there is a format that you need to comply with when you apply for the H1B process. So, Crystal, Kimberly will be able to share that in the group page kung ano yung format na yon. Make sure that your diploma, your transcript of record is updated because we're gonna need that when we file your H1B. At the same time, you have to have a valid PRC license if you are from the Philippines or if you are from the other countries. Make sure that your teaching license are still valid, right? And again, if you have a teaching license in the United States, that will actually give you some advantages. And lastly, ang sinasabi natin, when you get a job offer, don't be too excited to sign that job offer. Una, titingnan nyo muna yung cost of living. With the social media now, alamin nyo muna kung saang lugar kayo i-assign. No? Especially in the Philippines na we are very attuned to, or we are used to having a lot of people around us. But the United States is not like that, right? So most of the schools are basically, if you are not assigned in a city, then it's a rural area. So, and again, the good thing about Google Map or YouTube or any other social media platforms, you could basically check yung area of employment mo. So, before you sign that contract, do these things, right? Check your cost of living. You already have a job offer, you know your salary. So, tingnan mo kung worth it ba na lumipat ka doon. Kasi, pag inoferan ka ng dollars, hindi naman ibig sabihin, yun na yung masisave mo eh. Kasi, yung cost mo, dollars din. So, you have to balance that out. You also have to balance between ilan ba kayo mag-migrate. Ikaw lang ba? Asawa mo ba? Anak mo ba? So, syempre, it will add to the cost of living. And again, work culture. We know in the Philippines the degree of respect that students give to teachers, but it might be a different story working in the United States. And again, I want you to take an active role of learning those things because no one will teach you except yourself. You can ask your friends, you can join Facebook group, you can do your own research to do this. No? I would even encourage you to ask those questions during your interview. No? Ano ba yung teacher-student ratio? Ano bang kultura nila? Bakit ba sila nag-hire ng teachers? Dahil ba maraming nag-resign? Or dahil ba may rami talagang need? And so on and so forth. So again, it's okay to ask those questions during your interview. Crime indices, and again, accessibility of hospitals, basic needs. So again, with all that being said, again, thank you very much. So my team here would like to say thank you and have a nice day. So again, I'm actually encouraging people in our next live. We would want to encourage teachers who are already in the United States to share their experience, their challenges, their winning solutions or strategy to our Filipino, for other teachers who would want to teach in the United States. So again, thank you very much. Good night everyone in the Philippines and maraming salamat po. Thanks Crystal, Kimberly, and Cristel. Bye-bye.